And we are live. Okay. So, ladies, gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a conversation about Freemasonry. First, it's important that we note that our opinions and our thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant body, etc., all encompassing. We urge you to please connect with us and ask all your questions either here on the YouTube chat or on the room on the side of our Facebook page or on the Discord server. As well, if you guys like these podcasts, please like and review them, especially on um, uh, YouTube, because it helps with our ratings. We really appreciate that. So, on with our podcast. Uh, of course, I'm Stephen Chung. I am a decorated senior D Malay, past master of Prince Charles Lodge in number 153 here in BEA, beautiful Kelowna, British Columbia. I'm also a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason and a past thrice Super Grand Master of the Valley of Vernon. With me today is very worshipful brother David Colbeth, a past master of King Solomon Lodge, number 60 in Auburn, Washington. He is a past district deputy grand master for District 13 and a 32nd degree member of the Tacoma Valley of Scottish Rite. David also currently volunteers his time with his local D Malay chapter, and I believe the Rainbow Girls, where his daughter is active. He also serves on several Grand Lodge committees and, of course, dedicates some time to this awesome podcast. Brother Connor Massey, our partner in crime, is just working his way back to see if he can get back at home in time to jump onto the podcast. He was out doing some video blogging with our most worshipful Grand Master, Barry Burt, at the Victoria Day Parade. So we'll excuse him if he doesn't make it. As well, today we have with us, I'd like to give a brief intro and let him do that himself. Most worshipful brother Doug Collins from Kamloops. He was our past Grand Master from 2015-16 here in British Columbia. And here we are all to talk about the future of Freemasonry. And I'll pass it over to you, Doug.
Thanks very much, Stephen, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Doug Collins. I'm a member of Kamloops Lodge number 10. That's my mother lodge, and a member of several other lodges. I am a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Freemason, member of the Royal Arch and the Shrine, Legion of Honor of D Malay, and I don't know, that's enough.
It's quite the active life you've had there, Doug. I'm assuming that things have actually, mellowed out now that you've gone through the chair and have had time to settle back into what we call normal life.
Well, I think that may be a little understated, but it's been good. We've had a quiet couple of years, but now things are starting to creep back in, and they give you a year off, and then they start asking you to get active again. So we've been doing some things with some of the Grand Lodge committees and having a good time, just relaxing and doing some semi-retired work back in my broadcasting field. So it's been good.
Excellent. So we talk about the future of Freemasonry, and of course, that's not just here in our BC. That's in general on a global scale, I would say. Your thoughts about where we at and where we're going?
Well, I think we've come a long way in the past few years trying to get ourselves back on track. I think we went through a period of time where things were a little shaky. I think that we have been spending a lot of time trying to figure out who we are, what we're trying to do with the craft, how we engage people and make them want to continue on with us and stay as members of the craft. And I think we've done some good things to try to start that ball rolling. And I'm speaking just, of course, in British Columbia and Yukon, because I'm not overly familiar with what some of the current things are. Some of the things that we were working on when I was Grand Master have been, carried forward, and other new things are taking place. But I think we're in a position now where, where we've made some baby steps, and now we've just got to, to move forward. I think the future of the craft is good. I think it's still got a place in our lives. I really think it really comes down to, how we want to make it work and what we see as our goals for the future.
And speaking of initiatives that happened in your time, what is there any particular initiatives that came into play while you were in the Grand Line there that have really taken off now? You think some positive results?
Well, I think that what we've tried to do, Stephen, is tried to over the years prior to my year as Grandmaster and moving forward to this year, is that we've tried to first of all develop a plan where everybody gets on board. For so many years, Grand Lodge has always served the craft 1 year at a time, and we've not sort of carried it on from 1 year to the next. But I think that one of the things that we've accomplished over the past number of years is that we've tried to get everybody on board with some kind of a strategic plan, and that's come forward now with Most Worshipful Brother Barry Birch having his strategic plan put in place, where the lodges are really being challenged to look at themselves and say, what are we doing? What do we want to do? How do we get from A to B and make this craft vital again? And I think that's where it's got to start, is at the lodge level. I think that so much we've put so much emphasis on top-down things, and I think that we have to realize that Freemasonry, this is just my opinion, but I think Freemasonry has to be it has to be a bottom-up and not a top-down. I think the lodges are the people that have to decide what they want to do. Grand Lodge has a place to guide them and work with them and give them some help and direction, but what Most Worshipful Brother Birch is doing is what I think we need to do, and that's get the lodges involved at square one.
Yeah, I've seen that the lodges that are making progress using technology, that those that have also done simple things like adopted the Grand Lodge mentorship program and 6-step program. We're hearing a lot of positive results from the use of these tools that are out there, and I think that some of the really important things is maybe where we can maybe try and do better is getting support from Grand Lodge level to help the lodge at, like, some of the guys in lodges, some of the lodges, they don't have guys that have the know-how to implement things technology-wise within their own lodge. And so maybe there are some resources there could be put together. I noticed there was a best practices page, which is starting to grow.
Mm-hmm. I think here's my take on that, and it goes back to what I said earlier about the lodges being involved. We have one of the great things about going through the Grand Line is the places that you get to visit and to be able to see throughout the province and into other jurisdictions just what is available out there and what other people are doing. I'm disappointed, I guess, that best practices page, the last time I looked at it a couple of weeks ago, had only about 8 or 9 things on it. Well, I know firsthand that there are lodges that are doing some great things that aren't there, and I would like very much to see those lodges put those things up on the page. And that's what I'm saying about what we need to look at in terms of getting the lodges on board and participating in these things. We have a speakers bureau on the, as part of our education committee in Grand Lodge. And the chairman has been working now for 2 or 3 years, well, even longer than that, to try to get a good speakers bureau put together. But there are speakers out there who I know that have not put their names forward, and somehow we have to drive the lodges to be able to do that and get on board with that kind of program, because I think that
So,
when you mention small lodges, go ahead.
do I understand what you just said correctly? That Grand Lodge has a speakers bureau, like a list of speakers that can speak on various topics in our lodges that we could access somewhere. I didn't know we had that.
Well, it's been in development now. I have to say, Stephen, I can't say for sure that it's actually posted. I think it has been, but Very Worshipful Brother Dan Zermiak, who's been the head of the education committee, and people who have been on that committee before him have been working to develop this now for several years that I know of. But it's been hard to put that list together. And when you talk about smaller lodges who may not have some of those resources, that's the kind of thing that I think would really be beneficial, to be able to pull people in and get them to help. And you don't have to go too far away to find somebody who's pretty qualified to be able to speak. David might have some comments on what's happening in Washington.
Well, I was going to ask, Most Worshipful and even Stephen, have you had experience with those lodges that actually ask for the speakers? That's one of the things we're running into, and from what I hear around is that while they have speaker lists and there's qualified people on committees and qualified people in Grand Lodge and past Grand Masters or yourself that have a wealth of knowledge, but they don't get asked to come and speak many times. And so these lodges that really probably need that benefit of some good education and some good involvement, they just come in, pay their bills, and go home. But it seems like those lodges that are having that education time and discussion time and are doing much better. One of our past visitors just recently, Most Worshipful Jim Mendoza, just traveled to Portland recently to a Kenton Lodge and presented a speech on the, what do you call it, the oaks are falling. I think it was basically the idea that some of the knowledge that our elderly brethren retain and have is being taken from us, and it's not being passed on to younger Masons, not age-wise, but new Masons.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I guess if these
so I don't know, if your lodges, are they asking for it, and they're not, are they asking for more education and not getting it?
All right, one of the things that we've heard is over the years is that people want more education. Surveys have indicated that Masons want more education in their lodges, but I believe that there are relatively few lodges in this jurisdiction that actually ask for speakers. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm saying that as a general term, because there are certain lodges. Stephen's Lodge is one of them. There are a few in the lower mainland where they have quality education. And certainly those lodges are asking, but those lodges, by and large, are successful lodges. And those lodges, I think you have to have more in education than just somebody reading a little paper that they've taken out, somewhere. That there has to be some discussion. And so many times we've done that in our lodge. We've had some of the best meetings that we've ever had is when that discussion gets going and people start talking about things, and it can be something very simple, but it has to be more than just an education officer reading a 2-minute paper and that's it. You have to.
Well, it can be difficult. Yeah, it can be difficult for someone to kind of prompt the other guys to start talking about it, and that I think sometimes it's like with anything in Masonry or anything in any organization, when a new guy comes in and the meetings are quiet, all you do is pay bills or whatever. It doesn't matter if it's Masons or Lions or any other Rotary or anything. If it's kind of if the normal act is to not talk and just to come in and go out, then when somebody stands up and wants to have a discussion, nobody wants to talk because that's the way we've always done it. Nobody talks, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a problem, and it's a problem identifying people who can initiate that kind of discussion, and not every lodge has that. And that's where somebody from outside coming in can really be of benefit.
I think
What do
that,
you feel?
we need to start with the way membership is these days. If we looked at education more from a district level rather than a particular lodge level. And the reason I say that is because, the efforts that we've made to provide the type of education that the membership has been asked for as they've been coming in through the 6-step program, it's been, we're tailoring things to what they've been asking for, trying to give it to them the way they've been hoping, or what they've been hoping to get. And so, analyzing symbolisms and things like that is all great, but it was really the process that we found more challenging. Every worshipful master would come in and try and do something great and wonderful to improve these things, but then the next worshipful master comes in with a different agenda, right? So I think that what we did, one of the things that has made um, things like our More Light Night very well received is that it's open to the district. It's on a night where there is no other lodge things conflicting. It's very casual and self-directed. And I think that if we can find guys in each jurisdiction to, I guess, give that boost, that charge, that plug, and I think it's best done through the district deputies. I think if they can give the plugs as they go around and do their official visit, and find the guys who have so much knowledge and experience to share to try and do these in their area, I think that'll really help. Because guys don't want another meeting. Guys don't want, more things to tie down their time. They're trying to get that education in the time frame that we're already working with, but it's challenging.
I agree. I think that's the biggest challenge in dealing with some of our younger Masons is how to give them the quality of the meetings without giving them too many extra meetings when they've got 4 kids at home and a 2-hour commute to work and that sort of thing. They don't necessarily want another meeting. But on the other hand, you can get a situation where you can, if you do it right, provide some opportunities within a meeting to do it. Not like David says, just go in there and pay bills and go home after 20 minutes. That's, to me, not. I might as well just stay in my home and watch TV or read a Masonic book. I probably get as much out of it as that, other than the camaraderie of being with my brothers. But I do think that's an issue, and I think that we have to try to figure out a way to do that in a way that maximizes their time. I've got a bit of a bugaboo about trying to deal with the newer Masons, because I think that we have tended in the past, we have said, we have a new guy, let's get him active and let's give him a job. Let's get him active doing something. Let's get him to set up the festive board, or, let's get him to, be a part of this or that. My feeling on that kind of thing is I would rather get the older fellows who are retired to set up the festive board and give this new fellow some quality mentorship and education if we're going to take a half hour of his time to come and do something. I really think that we're not mentoring like we should be, and I think we all notice that there's all of these brothers who have been there for 50 years and never have come to a meeting. To me, we've underserved them somehow, because they've really got not much out of the craft,
right? And but it does, and that still, again, that brings it back to another well said point. You get out of it what you put into it, and if you're going to stay at home and not participate, then that's kind of what you're going to get out of it, right? And
exactly.
So I get everything that I am looking for out of Freemasonry, because I work at it. Freemasonry for me is the one thing I have that is for me. It's not something I do for my wife or my kids or anything else. It's something I do for me. And so I put effort into it, right? I participate because, it was no different, like I'm going to go to a reunion this weekend with D. Millay, and, now all of a sudden all my homeboys that are coming out, going to be like a Beaver Chat reunion, right? But they all joined Masonry when they jumped out of D. Millay, and there's maybe a couple on my 20 digits that I can count that are still active. And I know this because I waited and joined later and have been active 20 years, and they haven't been around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they got to put some effort in and to get out of it. But those, I think, that come and look, I think those are the ones that are going to make the effort. There's guys like me everywhere who make the time and effort to do things like text messaging program and to, give that extra push. I might get known as a bulldozer every now and then, but I get shit done, and guys that um, just sit on the sidelines and wait, it just never happened, right? So,
So how do we reach them?
well, I think it's really got to be a message from the district deputies when they go out, because that's the only time that Grand Lodge can really have, or not the only time, but I think that's the best time the Grand Lodge can have that influence. And if they maybe shared some of the stories, maybe Grand Lodge would put together the website for that practices. Maybe they got to start sharing some of the stories about the best practices and the things in there, so they can drive more usage of it. Right? It's already there on the site, right? Just drive people to it, right? Maybe that's the way to reach them. But I can tell you one thing.
Stephen, go ahead, and then we got a comment on our YouTube channel. So go ahead and finish that.
I can tell you one thing, that when I started doing text messaging 2 years ago, okay, I was fighting to get 40 guys to agree to be on the list, and we got over 112 guys on the list now that have asked to be there, and I think that's awesome. So it is growing, and I think it's like anything else, it takes time. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say you're talking about a system, or how do we do that? And Richard Porter commented about LEAP, LEAP. He said out of 130 lodges in the jurisdiction, only 90 choose not to participate in the Grand Lodge LEAP. What is that? Is that a BC program?
Well, actually, if I can just comment on that, Stephen, the program, and it's good that Richard asked that comment, because he and I we go back a number of years, and the LEAP program was started, and I certainly stand to be corrected, but my recollection of the LEAP program was that it was initiated in British Columbia by Most Worshipful Brother Bob McSween. And I may be wrong, but I believe that he stole that from Washington. And I could be wrong about that, but I do know that it came in during his time. And the LEAP program, to me, is a perfect way to start a lodge's strategic plan, because basically there are a number of steps in there, and there are 3 or 4 different parts of the program, but it involves visiting. It involves visiting by a group of principal officers. It involves visiting by a certain number of officers, and you get a certain number of points for each of those things that you tick off on the list. It involves education. It involves a whole gamut of things that, if you undertake them, you're really getting your lodge involved in doing the kinds of things that I think we all want to see us do. And the LEAP program, for some reason, whether it's because it was initiated by Grand Lodge, or whether, and people took exception, Grand Lodge is putting their thumb down, which tends to be, a reaction a lot of times when Grand Lodge tries to do something, then, but there has been a certain negative reaction to people getting involved. And it's only in the past, few years, I know Most Worshipful Brother Ron Yates, who immediate past Grand Master, really pushed that during his time as district deputy. He got all the lodges in his district on Vancouver Island to be involved in the LEAP program. They all did it. And it, to me, is a great plan for getting your lodge involved in things. But there hasn't been the mass acceptance that I think we would like to see in making that happen.
You know,
Well,
when I was a kid, all of the world's knowledge was contained in my dad's den on the third shelf of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
As much as I'd love to say that Washington could be credited for that, I just went out to the new, global knowledge of Google and searched for the LEAP program BC, and we have to give credit to Oregon. They were the ones. I see a little article in your BC newsletter. It talks about the LEAP program. I'm happy to get Most Worshipful McSweeney on and have him talk about that program and what it's done for BC, and maybe we can implement something like that in Washington.
Yeah, I assumed that it was Washington because Bob had so much. He still does have so much connection with Washington State, being close to the border. He has a number of memberships south of the border. So I just assumed he stole it from you guys. But it was a great idea, and certainly something that I think is part of his legacy, that he brought that into our jurisdiction, because I think it's a perfect blueprint. I assume Richard would agree with that, because I know he has been big on trying to organize things with his lodge in Penticton.
Yeah, he indicates on the chat, he's saying that he's disappointed that some are not participating or aware of what actions are necessary for a lodge to qualify for the award. And so I think it's just, as Stephen was saying, it's a matter of communication and getting the message out, whether it's at a Grand Lodge level or at a district level or at a local lodge level, making sure that these programs are available, understanding. Unfortunately, we had a program that became more of a plaque, an award system rather than a true performance system. It was a performance system, and so to encourage the guys in the lodges to participate, they developed plaques, and then it ended up just being a plaque delivery system. Every district meeting, the Grand Master and the district deputy felt like they had to give a plaque out to every lodge. And then one year, gosh, I remember it might have been my year as deputy or the year before, they changed the rules and said, okay, each district only gets one plaque. Basically, you just have to compete for that award, and not every lodge gets an award. And it was like a mass exodus. I think out of our 9 lodges, I think only 1 participated. It was everybody kind of refit it was
might have been one of
when it's an award system and not a true actions, then that doesn't do it good.
Yeah, I think that if you look at it as a means to an end, and not the end, like the end not being the plaque or the certificate, but the end being actually a lodge that's doing some things, that's a much better way of looking at it, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things that could be done to help improve the communications is simply like when Grand Lodge sends something out to the secretaries that they want to be read in lodge, they should also have them forward it to their membership, so that they get the document that's being read out in lodge. They have it at their leisure, and especially for the members that can't get out to lodge and participate. They don't even know that something's been read out in lodge, and they'll probably never hear about it because they weren't there, right? But if Grand Lodge documents that they want read out in lodge were by default asked to be forwarded to each of the lodge members, at least more would be more informed, I think.
Do you have any sense of how many members, how many emails of members that the lodges actually have, or Grand Lodge actually have? I think our numbers are in the low, under 50% at one point. I don't know if they've gotten better now, but it's surprising how few email addresses the lodge.
Your volume keeps going up and down, so I can't hear half of what you're saying.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Doug.
I was just going to say, I got most of what you were saying there, and I think that, one of our database here, all of the email addresses now for members are pretty much on the database, and each secretary has copies, mass distribution list, and there are very few members who do not have, at least in our lodge here in Kamloops, do not have an email address that we can connect with. But I agree with Stephen. We have to make sure that we do all our business now and correspondence in our Board of General Purposes meetings, and the only correspondence we really read out at our meetings is from Grand Lodge. But we do email all of the minutes of the Board of General Purposes meeting out to the members so that they are aware of the things that are being discussed. But I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that these messages, even about things like this podcast, are sent out to the various members of the jurisdiction who say, hey, did you know there's a Masonic podcast? The Working Tools podcast runs every Monday at 12 noon, and you can stream it later if you miss it. I don't think that message is out there. And there are other messages about various things that we do in our craft that aren't there. Some lodges that have good education, and I'm thinking now of a couple of lodges in Vancouver, Park Lodge in Vancouver, and Duke of Connaught in North Vancouver. They're not the only ones by any stretch, but Most Worshipful Brother Philip Durrell, who was my predecessor in the Grand East, is doing quality education, and they put out posters of things that are coming up and dates that are coming up when they have their days of enlightenment, similar to what Stephen and his group are doing in the Okanagan. And those things are pretty well publicized, and I think that we just have to continue to do more of that to get that message out.
I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that the more things that come online, like these podcasts and the different efforts that happen throughout the valleys, it can only improve it. Like Vernon, for example, they do a social every Friday, whether it's 1 or 2 or 12 guys. They have a social every Friday, and that's the one constant that their lodge wants to achieve, right? And that's what their lodge is looking for. So they had guys who took the initiative to make it happen, and I think that's really what it takes in each lodge or district, for that matter, is to find 1 or 2 guys that think, hey, that's a pretty cool idea. Maybe if we can make that happen.
We've done that here. We've done that in Kamloops for many years. We had we have lunch on Friday at noon, and we get up to 20 guys come out and participate. It's open to Masons and their wives if they want to come, and doesn't have to be Masons. It can be anybody really, but mostly it's Masons. And we have lunch and chat, and it's just a great way of having people who are interested in the craft come out, and we get them to meet some of the guys and see if there's some connection there. And sometimes it's led to new people petitioning to join, and sometimes it's I'm sure led to some people who have decided Freemasonry is not for them. But that's what we're trying to do. We want quality people, and it's not for everybody. So we give them a chance, and if they are on board, great. And if they're not, well, they'll serve in some other capacity, I'm sure. But the reality is that I think we've done a great job over the years in our jurisdiction. The past few years, we have done a terrific job in improving the structure of Freemasonry. We mentioned Richard Porter on the line there earlier. Richard Porter was on our governance committee and has been the focal point of improving our governance in our lodge. We have had tremendous work done on our constitution and our ritual. I think that the thing that has been lacking is the inspiration to do things that benefit the brethren from, let me put it, a Masonic standpoint, in terms of the quality of the experience as a lodge member, the camaraderie, the festive boards, the ritual, the education, all of those things. I think those are areas that we continue to need to work on. And I think that's the kind of thing that Most Worshipful Brother Birch's efforts this year at strategic planning and forcing the lodges to come up with what they would like to see, I think will be a real boon going forward, because I know he's got subsequent members of the Grand Line on board, which is critical to carry this through to another year. And I think that's going to be the type of thing that is going to help us as we move forward.
Yeah. You know, I know one of the things that they're working on is rebuilding our website to make it more user friendly. You know, David was showing us in a previous podcast some of the things that were available on their Washington Grand Lodge of Washington's website, which were quite impressive. And you know, being the guy who's in charge of the website for our lodge, you know, we've been looking at our usage. What do the guys want to see on it, and so on. And you know, if we built in all these really cool tools we saw, would they get used? So it leads me to ask David, you know, do you know whether or not the cool tools that you guys have built into the Grand Lodge of Washington's site, have they been well used, well publicized, I guess, and promoted, etc.?
Well, it's a little bit funny in that you think it's so awesome, and there's a lot of complaints in our jurisdiction of people asking about modifying our website and making it even better. So I appreciate that you like it. I think with anything, those that know about it and know why it's important will use it. But if they don't know why it's important, then they won't use it. And so, like the old adage, the short story: if you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. If somebody doesn't understand the value in the website and the tools available on anywhere, it doesn't matter. I mean, I had a new guy ask about our lodge website, which I kind of manage, and I said, well, I like to look at it more as a brochure than an active website. Our active discussion and community happens kind of on Facebook mostly, or in person. We don't have. We do have a calendar as well that's active, but I can put and post the new photos for the officers and some of our events, and that's about it. I don't want to have to manage the website and update it every day or every week. That happens through our Facebook and other communications, emails, and we do have you mentioned our Grandview. And so when I talk about our emails, yes, our emails are getting better because of our Grandview system. It's all digital now, and so I think we're up to a much higher number on communication and emails, but through direct communication on email, through direct communication in person, and then through our Facebook channels, I think our main communication and those get used. But you know, all the forms like on Grandview, they're moving things into Grandview. So Entered Apprentice has access to certain things, Fellowcraft has access to more things, and the Master Mason has access to even more. But it's still pretty new. It's only a couple of years old, and so they're still learning how it works for one, and then how to get that message out to people and the membership so they know how to use it. It's difficult. People don't like to learn new things. You know, they like the way things have always been. They like paper. It's hard to get.
Is there an effort by the Grand Lodge to educate people as to its existence and its usage?
I wouldn't say specifically. We have the print media and email media that goes out, email newsletter that goes out to talk about it. But if people aren't checking their email or learning about it, you know, the messages that are being displayed in district meetings and things are more the current Grand Master's message or current things that are happening with events, you know, lodge leadership retreats or other district meetings or other education programs that are going on. Not so much on the website, but here's there isn't a lot of membership training on Grandview, how to access it, what to do with it. There is regular training for officers on how to use the back end, but not so much the membership. And I've been a outspoken proponent about just making quick videos so people know how to use it. And everybody always wants to take time to make these videos really beautiful and perfect and edit things out. And I say just start recording and hit record, you know, get it done. Don't worry about making it perfect. If you really want to make it perfect, then you can do it later. just start recording things and getting the message out. It's amazing. If you look at the real world, Google is the #1 search engine, and YouTube, who they own, of course, is the #2 search engine. Video, as is what we're doing today, going to be the new media and continuing to be the new media for search and for knowledge distribution.
Right. And Doug, do you know of anything in our Grand Lodge that is on the move for new stuff to help us communicate better, or
In terms of the website,
or anything?
well, I think that trying to be politically correct here, but I think Grand Lodge has done a pretty good job of trying to communicate things. I think that the problem lies in the fact that many lodges don't look and listen. We went a few years back. We went the old printed bulletin we had was costing too much, and it was a tremendous effort for our grand historian and our clerk of the office, Right Worshipful Brother Trevor McEwen, to put that together every month. And so we decided that we just could not afford to do that anymore. So we went to an electronic bulletin. The bulletin has more information in it overall than the previous printed bulletin had, and I think is making some progress towards getting some of that information out. But it's a question again of people submitting information to fill that. People have reacted. People who like, as David says, the printed paper, they've reacted negatively to having that electronic bulletin, even though they're capable of using the internet and getting it because it's given to you in a PDF format that is all inclusive. All you have to do is download it, and it's not a big deal to do that. So but that has proven, and I edited it for the first few years, and it was like pulling teeth. And if I hadn't been in a position where I got all the lodge notices from around the province from my time as Grand Master, then I wouldn't have been able to know half the things that were going on that I could ask for information from, because people weren't taking the time to submit it. But I mean, that has potential to reach everybody. Our website,
Again, it needs to be promoted too, right? And in all fairness, in that, or in all honesty, I think that's where it lost a lot of its traction, because I was a very faithful news bulletin reader, and then all of a sudden I didn't get it no more, and I didn't know for a couple of years that it had come out into an EB format, and then I heard about it, and then it was a struggle for me to find out how to get it, and then now I get it, and I forward it on to other people who haven't figured out how to get it, right? And so it's being forwarded and forwarded and forwarded now, right? Which is kind of funny in a sense, but you're right. It took a long time for it to come around and get noticed again, but I think it needs more promotion. And like Richard Porter said in his thing, his secretary forwards on things from Grand Lodge to the membership. I wish all secretaries did, because I might have had that EB link a lot sooner, because apparently a couple years before I found out about it.
Well, I would say to you that as the first editor of the electronic version, that information was sent out many times to lodges to pass on to their members how to get access to it. We did have some glitches. It was not a perfect launch, and I would certainly be the first to admit that, but it has certainly been promoted. It's been promoted through Grand Lodge publications. It's promoted with emails. But I agree with you, Stephen. I mean, sometimes we think we've promoted some of these things well, and maybe we haven't. I certainly would be the first to admit that. My personal feeling is that we did a lot of work to promote the EB. I think Grand Lodge promotes a lot of stuff that never filters down to the members. And I don't know how David feels about experiences in Washington, but I believe that a lot of stuff gets sent out from Grand Lodge that gets processed in a meeting as, oh yeah, we have some correspondence from Grand Lodge and it's on my desk if anybody wants to read it, which nobody does. You know, we're getting away from that now and more is being read out, but I think that we still have a lot of promotional work. We have a lot of promotional work to do about so many things that we do. And I think that's going to be a focus of what we have to look at as a Grand Lodge.
Yeah, I think that no, there's no reason that Grand Lodge couldn't use a method like YouTube to put out video messages on a regular basis. And you know, just another thought to another way to connect with the membership that is out there using the YouTube and new technology, right? I mean, we are getting more guys. I mean, look how many guys now. When I started doing text messaging, you ask people to put their hands up. How many guys have cell phones, right? And you might get 5-10 guys who put their hands up, and now it's like easier to say how many guys don't have one, right? And you might get a couple of guys put their hands up. So the technology is being adopted slowly and should, but for sure it is. It's just a matter of getting faster at adopting it within our organization membership.
Yeah, slow steps, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. It's like you say, a couple of years of traction, right? What's the one thing that Masons don't like? Change.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I shift a little bit just for the last few minutes here? I wanted to ask, so we have the 6 steps program, and then of course we have proficiency that a guy has to do when he comes in as a Mason that's ritual related. But does BC have a program that's kind of the what's next after steps? How do you teach him? We talk about not having content meetings. Well, is there a real mentorship? Not something we say we have, but is there really happening a real mentorship program that takes a guy through and says, here's the 5 things or 10 things or 12 things that you should learn for the next 5 years or 6 months or whatever it is. When I talked about at Grand Lodge one time that when I became a Mason, I was looking for this education and looking for this mystic theory of Masonry, and I just assumed that for 6 months or 3 months or however long, every Saturday morning from 8 till noon or something, I'd have to go to a training session to learn about this mystery called Masonry and learn what I'm supposed to be learning as education. And then when it didn't happen, that became my expectation. And so now, guys, hey, we're going to have an education on Saturday morning from 8 to noon. They go, oh. So does BC have something like that is kind of compulsory?
No, if I can speak to that, Stephen, before you jump in, I think that one of the things that we really struggle with is the whole mentorship process. We've talked, and I have books here in my basement here about mentorship programs that go back a long way, that had a tremendous amount of work put into them. But I don't sense that there are a lot of strong mentors out there who actually will sit and say, okay, here's your next step. Here's what you have to do. I find that a lot of sponsors, once they've signed the petition papers, disappear into the woodwork. And I think they need to be some of the people who really continue on and mentor some of these candidates. And we're trying to do that in our lodge now, where we're saying, you sponsor somebody, you have an obligation to mentor them and bring them along. And I know when I came into the craft in 1978, I had a sponsor who every Thursday night I knew I was going to his house, and I was working on my memory work to prove up, and I was doing other things that I needed to have done. And I had lodge officers who said, hey, we're going to Merritt tonight, and we're going to come by and pick you up. I mean, it was not a question or not a, do you want to come? It was like, we're coming by your house at 6:45, we'll pick you up. And that, was what you were expected to do. Yep. Now we have very little visiting. Stephen's got a tremendous program in the Okanagan there where He gets a lot of people out to a lot of meetings. There are not, in my humble opinion, very many areas where we have a leader like that who takes the bull by the horns. And I think that's what we need. We need people to take the bull by the horns. We have a new member pathway that is being developed that provides for a lot of that mentorship, but it's still going to be on the individual lodges to have people identified who can be the next Stephen Chung, who can do that kind of thing, right? And that's, Stephen's one of those people that has done that, and there are other people throughout the jurisdiction too, but that's the kind of thing that we need to move forward on if we're going to be successful.
Yeah. I'd love to get inside track on that new member pathway. I'd love to know what you're doing there.
Well, I think that we can certainly help with information on that. I think that, in this program, and I notice where the time is right now, I mean, we've only touched, the bare bones of what, the future of Freemasonry. We really have, sort of skidded along the surface. There's so much depth there that we could get into to really talk about it, because we've got a great fraternity. We don't have, it seems, all the movers and shakers we used to have in the early days of Freemasonry, where they, got around a table and planned the future of the world, if you like. But we have a craft that I think is worth fighting for, and I think we're making progress, and we certainly got some quality people, and we just have to, continue moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I appreciate the support there. But all I did was open a book called the Mentorship Program that was put out from Grand Lodge, and actually asked somebody else to read it. That's all I did, right? And so it really grew from there. And I mean, one of the things you said, I wanted to address, because it's one of those things that I think is from days in the past, and that's the mentorship. It used to be the guy who brought you in became your mentor, and it used to be that was the guy you'd spend your time with. But being that guys don't have all that time, the design that Grand Lodge came out with in the mentorship program, by having a committee of mentors and a group of people to spread the work among, probably the best suggestion ever, because as the saying goes, many hands make light work. And when we've got one guy who can't be there for a mentorship coaching session, then you got another guy who can, right? So some of the things that were from days gone by are maybe just that, going to stay there as we adopt some of the newer technology and more so, I guess, the ways of doing things, because now we're doing them in group sessions rather than one-on-one, right? And I think that Grand Lodge, by continuing to address what the membership is looking for, is what's going to keep our Freemasonry going forward interesting and alive. Because why do we come back? Ask yourself that question, right? And if you're getting what you're looking for out of it, that's why you're coming back, right?
And a lot of people have different things they're looking for, and part of the balance is trying to determine that. And part of the balance, like you say, is when you're looking at older ways of doing things, the mentorship from decades ago, one of the questions that I always have is what can we change from the ancient landmarks that isn't going to affect the history and the quality of the fraternity, and what can we change that makes it more engaging and more valuable to newer members? I think that Freemasonry has had a rich history, and I think there's things with the craft that we don't want to change, but there probably are some things we can change that will make it more engaging and more relative to the newer millennials and beyond, whatever the next generation is beyond the Generation Zs or whatever they are. So, we're trying to wrestle with that and determine where that line is. And that's a tough one. That's going to take some work.
That it is, I'm sure. I mean, whether you're in good old BC here or in Washington State or in New York, it doesn't really matter. I think that all organizations are facing the same struggle in that sense of how to stay up and keep the attention of their current members. And I believe that we've got a lot of good things in play already, and that they will be successful as they gradually get adopted. Things like more helpful websites help those that are looking for that type of thing, that information at the fingertips, for different ways of mentoring. Like, everything evolves a little bit, and I think that we're doing a darn fine job in North America here, anyways, of finding ways to work within the new age.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I think definitely taking advantage of the technology too. I mean, gosh, what an opportunity would be if we had some guys sitting around a table at a secure place for instruction, and Most Worshipful Doug could come in and enlighten us with some of his mentorship. I mean, that's the global idea behind what we're at now, is that the world is very small with technology, and these lines are secure. Video, as long as you're not broadcasting on YouTube or something, or broadcasting to something, if it's a secure 1 to 2 or 1 connection, and we know who's online, it's a secure place for instruction as far as I'm concerned. And so we could have those dialogues and bring in knowledge from other areas instead of hearing the same old from somebody. It'd be even better to do it in person, of course, but using technology to our advantages is something we.
Everyone's time, noticing that we're coming down to our final minutes in time allotted for the podcast. Is there any message in particular with respect to today that you wanted to get out there? We'll start going around the table with, of course, our guest of the day, Doug.
Well, I just want to say that I think this has been a great opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to chat. Hope I get a chance to do it again, because like I say, we've kind of just scratched the surface, and I think there's so much out there, as David said, that we could take advantage of. It just requires a couple of people like yourselves and Connor and people that are making these things happen to provide that initial commitment, and hopefully we can build on there so that the work's not just the work of a couple of guys, because that's always been one of our downfalls. We put a lot of pressure on a small number of people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely appreciate you coming on, Most Worshipful. And as you'll see in coming up podcast shows, that we've got some return guests that are going to become somewhat hosts and interviewing some other people. So be careful what you wish for. Have you back on again. I really appreciate you being here, and it's been a fun discussion today. It always seems like with anything, we call it the meeting after the meeting, and so you want to have that continued discussion. And you're at the top of the stairs, and then you're at the bottom of the stairs for another hour, and then you're outside for another hour.
Yeah, that's right. No,
yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and I do hope Stephen had asked me at one time to be a more regular participant, and maybe he's fired up my interest. I don't know.
I think it's a great medium. I think we all have some different quality thoughts to share, and I think that we'd love to have you on again, and I'm sure there's going to be many opportunities and topics we can talk about in the years to come. And the best part is that these things stay online, and they're available for people at their own leisure of time, and not necessarily those who couldn't be with us here while we're live, right? So, and just so that a lot of our videos where we have half a handful of people watching, they're being viewed a couple hundred times, and I'd like to thank our returning visitors as well, our regular subscribers and listeners, for watching and reviewing our videos on YouTube. We really do appreciate that. And again, our guest host, Doug, thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. David, any other final words from your side?
No, again, we're just really appreciative of Doug being here, and looking forward to having him back again, and see you soon.
All right.
Good week, everyone.
I know that Connor is going to be really bummed that he missed this whole episode because he'd been trying to schedule everything around making sure he was here to be on with Doug. He was wanting to really participate in this conversation. I'm sure he's missing this one and wishes you well as well. I know he was doing that new video blogging thing with the Grandmaster. So more on that because I'm sure that'll be on our channel too. All right. So with that being said, I think it's time to build the light, as they say. So podcast land, have a happy rest of your day, everybody.